Y'all.
You can't stop the rain.
What's going on, guys? So glad you are with us. Appreciate you.
So I saw a video pop up with two influential people. I don't know what they're talking about because I wanted for us to react to it first. But the title says Thomas Sowell and Jordan Peterson must watch. So I'm wondering what they're talking about.
Let's go.
You know what I'm saying? I'm like, what y'all talking about?
What a great combination.
It is.
You may not realize it, but you are currently funding some dangerous people. They are indoctrinating young minds throughout the West with their resentment-ridden ideology. They have made it their life's mission to undermine Western civilization itself, which they regard as corrupt, oppressive, and patriarchal. If you're a taxpayer or paying for your kid's liberal arts degree, you're underwriting this gang of nihilists. You're supporting ideologues who claim that all truth is subjective, that all sex differences are socially constructed, and that Western imperialism is the sole source of all third world problems. They are the postmodernists, pushing progressive activism at a college near you. They produce the mobs that violently shut down campus speakers, the language police who enshrine into law use of fabricated gender pronouns, and the deans whose livelihoods depend on madly rooting out discrimination where little or none exists. Their thinking took hold in Western universities in the 60s and 70s when the true believers of the radical left became the professors of today. And now we rack up education-related debt, not so that our children learn to think critically, write clearly, or speak properly, but so they can model their mentors' destructive agenda. To understand and oppose the postmodernists, the ideas by which they orient themselves must be clearly identified. First is their new unholy trinity of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Wow.
Okay.
Diversity is defined not by opinion, but by race, ethnicity, or sexual identity.
Yep.
Equity is no longer the laudable goal of equality of opportunity, but the insistence on equality of outcome. And inclusion is the use of identity-based quotas to attain this misconceived state of equity. All the classic rights of the West are to be considered secondary to these new values. Take, for example, freedom of speech, the very pillar of democracy. The postmodernists refuse to believe that people of goodwill can exchange ideas and reach consensus. Their world is instead a Hobbesian nightmare of identity groups warring for power. They don't see ideas that run contrary to their ideology as simply incorrect. They see them as integral to the oppressive system they wish to supplant, and consider it a moral obligation to stifle and constrain their expression. Second is rejection of the free market, of the very idea that free voluntary trading benefits everyone. They won't acknowledge that capitalism has lifted up hundreds of millions of people, so they can, for the first time in history, afford food, shelter, clothing, transportation, even entertainment and travel. Those classified as poor in the US, and increasingly everywhere else, are able to meet their basic needs. Meanwhile, in once prosperous Venezuela, until recently the poster child of the campus radicals, the middle class lines up for toilet paper. Third and finally are the politics of identity. Postmodernists don't believe in individuals. You're an exemplar of your race, sex, or sexual preference. You're also either a victim or an oppressor. No wrong can be done by anyone in the former group, and no good by the latter. Such ideas of victimization do nothing but justify the use of power and engender intergroup conflict.
Are we becoming a nation of intellectuals?
Wait, he said a handful. I just want to say before Thomas Sowell comes in, he just said a handful on how it's just dominant. It's really dominant power pushing to say you need to accept this, you need to accept that, and then we're going against freedom of speech and everything because once you do freedom of speech, people want to attack you. When did the world become where everything's now I need to accept everyone's sexual immoralities? Why do I have to bow down to Baal?
Well, I mean, that's what he's explaining is about how the system has changed. And that's because the people who are monopolizing the system want you to adapt to their or conform to their ideology, which is now in the schools, universities, elementary schools. Crazy.
And I know this is true firsthand. I know this true firsthand.
I hadn't thought of that. It's
Let's go back. Come on, make sure you hit him with
Justify
the
the use
question.
of power and engender intergroup conflict.
Are we becoming a nation of intellectuals?
I hadn't thought of that. It's a chilling thought, because we're becoming a nation of people who are propagandized from elementary school right on through to the graduate school in a certain vision of the world. And only the ones who, for one reason or another, either experience or insight or whatever, leads them to say, wait a minute. Only those are the ones that we have to depend on.
This is an excerpt taken from the book Intellectuals and Society by Dr. Thomas Sowell. He saw this a long time ago. Back in the 18th century, William Godwin articulated this argument when he said, "The next generation will not have so many prejudices to subdue. Children, according to Godwin, are a sort of raw material put into our hands. Their minds are like a sheet of white paper. At the same time, they are oppressed by their parents, and must go through, according to him, 20 years of bondage before they receive the scanty portion of liberty, which the government of my country happens to concede to its adult subjects." William Godwin's notion that the young are a sort of raw material put into our hands remains, after 2 centuries, a powerful temptation to classroom indoctrination in schools and colleges. In the early 20th century, Woodrow Wilson wrote of his years as an academic administrator when he felt, "I should like to make the young gentlemen of the rising generation as unlike their fathers as possible." This indoctrination can start as early as elementary school, where students are encouraged or required to write about controversial issues, sometimes in letters to public officials. More fundamentally, the indoctrination process habituates them to taking sides on weighty and complex issues after hearing just one side of those issues. Moreover, they are habituated to venting their emotions, instead of analyzing conflicting evidence and dissecting conflicting arguments. In short, they are led to prepackaged conclusions, instead of being equipped with the intellectual tools to reach their own conclusions, including conclusions different from those of their teachers.
See, it's like, okay, this is, y'all can, no, you can't have your own conclusion, you can't have your own thought. This is what you think. And then when you tell people, when you tell little minds, this is what you think, that's what they grow up thinking that this is true, because you force the conclusion in me. Like, I can't think beyond that. And then after you get to a certain point, and your mind has accepted that, you don't think there is a conclusion that you have. You think that is the conclusion.
In many colleges and universities, whole academic departments are devoted to particular prepackaged conclusions, whether on race, the environment, or other subjects, under such names as black, women's, or environmental studies. Few, if any, of these studies include conflicting visions and conflicting evidence, as educational rather than ideological criteria might require. One of the remarkable self-indulgences of contemporary educators in the public schools has been the introduction into classrooms of programs which systematically undermine moral principles that have come down over the centuries, and which children have been taught by their parents. These programs have usually been developed by intellectuals outside the field of education, extensively marketed by both commercial firms and non-profit organizations, and are often eagerly embraced by educators who have been taught in schools of education that their role is to be that of agents of social change, not simply transmitters of a heritage of knowledge. These programs have a remarkable variety of names and ostensible goals, one of the earliest names being values clarification, though other names have proliferated after parents and others discovered what values clarification really meant in practice and raised objections. The phrase values clarification is very misleading. When parents tell their children not to steal or lie, or engage in violence, there is no ambiguity as to what they mean.
Right.
Ambiguity is introduced by programs which confront students with carefully crafted moral dilemmas, such as a situation where a ship is sinking and there are more people than the lifeboats can hold, so that decisions have to be made as to who is to be left to drown, perhaps beaten off when they try to climb out of the water onto a lifeboat that is already so full that it will capsize if another person climbs in. Because received moral principles do not always apply, the implication is that each individual should develop his or her own situational ethics to replace traditional morality, not only where traditional moral principles fail but in the vast range of more ordinary situations where there are no such dilemmas as those in contrived examples. If such exercises seem remote from the purposes of a public school education, they are not remote from the philosophy introduced into education by John Dewey a century ago, and promoted by schools of education to the present day. Nor were they remote from the thinking by Woodrow Wilson. Like so much in the vision of the Anointed, This view of education exalts those who believe in it, and so it is not simply a set of testable hypotheses about social events.
Okay.
Also, like other aspects of that vision, there is no price to be paid by its promoters for being wrong. However, larger price ends up being paid by individual students or by society at large. Values clarification has been just one of a wide range of high-sounding names for classroom programs to reshape the attitudes and consciousness of the younger generation. Other names have included effective education, decision-making, quest, sex education, and many other imaginative titles. Such titles are often simply flags of convenience, under which schools set sail on an exciting voyage in an uncharted sea of social experimentation in the reshaping of young people's beliefs and attitudes. The ever-changing names for these programs reflect the need for concealment or misdirection, since few parents want to be told that schools are out to undo what the parents have taught their children or to mold those children to be what third parties want them to be. To help spread Thomas Sowell's message around the world, please consider subscribing.
So, and I like,
Hey, I got
there's
but hold on, but it's simple. Hey, man or woman?
certain things
over.
that, I want to get this out before I forget it.
Go ahead.
Certain things that I feel like certain things parents should instill in their kids, and not to leave this up to, education. Because you have someone who's writing the curriculum that's going to be teaching your kid based off of what they feel they need to know and take into broader society, when there's certain things that sex education is one of them. I think morals and values should be taught at home, and the school system should reiterate and back them up. There needs to be a compliance. There needs to be a cohesiveness between, what some of the parents, what parents think, and what the classroom or the curriculum in the classroom is doing. But now, what happens when you have certain homes that view things completely different about sex versus what the norm has been? So, is it a catch-22, or is that just still completely up to the parent, and that's going to be, their household, and their kid is going to have to learn and make decisions for themselves? Because the schools now seem to be twisting up a lot of things.
I believe 100% the parents. The parents are the foundation. If the parents, you got solid parents, and they say, look, I know this is what they teach you in school, but this is this, and this is right, and this is wrong. And I guess you have to communicate it to the child so he don't go stomp in that class and be like, y'all wrong. But you have to, I believe that's the parent's household, because you let the school teach them. Just you see which way it's starting to go.
And now many
some of the teachers, I believe, not even that all the teachers might not even agree with this stuff, but it's probably being forced upon them.
And many of the households are still flip-flopping it to say, well, this is right and that's wrong. So, what do you do in that sense? And when they're at school,
that's when people start making truths instead of just the truth,
But also, too, instead of trying to indoctrinate falsely, focus on the things that matter. That's going to help the kid be a productive citizen in society when it comes to taking care of themselves and helping others.
The sex of a person is so irrelevant.
I mean, I wasn't even about to go down that lane. I'm just talking about what's being. I'm talking. Well, I'm
saying them focusing on that is so irrelevant to when they get to the world.
Yeah, teach them about money, entrepreneurship, business development, or based off of whatever their need and desire is for themselves. That is the branch and the education curriculum the child should feed her into, even at the basic elementary school level. If this kid is not going to go to a higher learning, it does not need to go because they don't want to be a professional educator, doctor, lawyer. There are certain things that you do need to go to college for if you're going to become a medical doctor, dentist, pediatric, pharmacist, and the list can go on. But as an entrepreneur, what was the whole point of me taking certain classes, social studies, math classes?
Right.
I started when I wanted to be a cosmetic dentist in undergrad. Then I took certain levels of math, but it was like you don't need that if that's not the track. And if that's your track, then that needs to be clear in high school so you can start preparing for those courses. But it's no need to take chemistry in high school if I'm not interested or have not the medical field, engineering, physics, any of that. What's the point?
Baby, it seems like you going
I'm just
way
saying.
on.
No, but that's what he was.
You see this right here? Like, go ahead and land that thing. I don't know where you're going. But
I just said it.
But so in the end, man, there
it's bringing back to teaching what's relevant to the kid versus the stuff that's irrelevant. That's why I was going.
And some of these foundational things that really are pushing, parents need to teach this stuff at home. Tell them what the truth is at the house. Okay, man. Like always, man. Like,
comment, subscribe.
Don't take a nosedive, but comment down in the section below
if you want some more.
All right.
See you in the next video, guys. Love you.